Guitar face. It's awesome, it's goofy, it's wild, and it's hilarious. But why does it happen? Where does it come from? What the f am I doing in space? Before we start, which guitar player do you think has the best guitar face? Which one has the worst? Let me know in the comments down below. Guitar face is as satisfying for players to express as it is for audiences to watch. Wacky, wild, weird. But why do guitar players make such weird faces while they're shredding it up? Well, there's a few reasons. Let's break it down. 1. Motor overflow. When a person is very concentrated on something, especially a physical task, sometimes secondary involuntary muscle contractions can happen. These involuntary muscle movements are called motor overflow, or involuntary movements that accompany voluntary movements. While a lot of the literature on this relates to neurological disorders in children and elderly, this can also happen naturally in healthy adults as well. When your face gets really scrunched up or does intense twitches when you're at a difficult part in a video game, a bodybuilder lifting something incredibly heavy, Elmer Fudd sticking his tongue out while he's going for a slam dunk, all motor overflow. 2. Putting on a show. Some people, including me, over-exaggerate their physical emoting on stage in order to have a more engaging show for the audience. People respond better to a performance where someone appears to be fully engaged or just really enjoying the task that they're doing. While standing in one spot and barely moving while you're shredding out a million notes may be what that actually looks like when you're in your bedroom, to people who are in the audience, that's kind of boring and they don't get that communicated to them visually. Exaggerating, sometimes trying to creatively interpret body or facial movements can actually enhance a visual communication of just how into your performance you are. Big body movements and weird facial expressions typically enhance a band's stage presence. 3. Emoting. There is something natural and magical that happens when you finally understand music on an intimate emotional level. Your body begins to respond physically. Now, when you're making the music and concentrating on making sure you're playing it accurately, sometimes that response can be tamped down a little bit, but it will still come through. Sometimes your body is mimicking the sound that you're trying to make in a way of putting yourself in an emotional state to where you're further connecting to the music you're playing. And your body can be mimicking the emotions that you're feeling while hitting each note, almost like you can't keep it in. On some of my Instagram videos that you see me playing on, you'll see me wince like, or even on the last video, a lot of people said I looked like I was trying to take a massive dump. That obviously isn't because we're in pain, even though it looks like it. Did you ever have so much of a pleasurable feeling that it became painful? Just so satisfying, like scratching a never-ending itch perfectly, but you have to keep scratching? It's kind of like that. Now, I cannot necessarily analyze other guitar players' guitar faces accurately since I'm not them. I can't read their minds and I don't know what's going through their brains while they're playing on the guitar or what's happening with them emotionally. But luckily, I have a bunch of crappy footage from Instagram of me playing guitar just above mediocrity. So let's dive in. All right, so that first big bend, you see my face wince, you see my eyes squint. I'm feeling that bend, like someone's massaging my back and they're at the perfect place right in between the shoulder blades. That feeling after you just ate something mind-blowingly incredible, or you're at the climax of your girlfriend waxing your car. When I use the word tasty, which I've used a lot, that's the feeling that I'm expressing. Just completely right in the pocket, that tension that you have inside of you, whether that be physically, emotionally, or mentally, is just being massaged out in the best way. And your tension is fighting back, but you're just like, F you, I'm gonna keep going. It's that feeling of satisfying release. And it's that same feeling when you hit a tasty bend. I don't know how well I actually hit the bend, but by me making that face and feeling that emotion was supposed to inspire me to perform that in my expression. Next thing I want to point out, I start doing some kind of like head circle things like this. The first one is to mimic the cascading motion of the melodic contour. The second one is a little bit more dramatic because that bend and release kind of acts as a sonic whipping. The bend of that phrase is kind of like cracking a whip, and the rest of the melodic phrase is like lassoing before you finally go crack. That last part where I hit the final note and I'm pulling the whammy way up. I'm physically feeling the tension of the string, and I'm also mimicking the wow with my mouth. I would say performance-wise, it's slightly exaggerated, but not too far off from what I would naturally do without thinking about it. Again, trying to get myself into the mood and mindset of that particular moment of the solo. In this next one, you're going to notice a lot less movement from my head and my face. And that's because I was at maximum concentration. I was barely able to play this whole thing correctly once, and I needed a lot of concentration to make sure I didn't mess up any of the notes, and there was a lot of them flying by quickly, which requires more concentration. My eyes are mostly locked in on the fretboard, except for the prolonged vibrato notes in the beginning where I get a little bit of that tasty face and do a little bit of a head turn in satisfaction. Like, damn. You'll notice some slight movements and twitches in my mouth where I'm actually exerting myself more mentally at those specific changes on the fretboard. Especially at this part where I have to make a tough string skip to go way up in interval and then immediately slide down and then finish out the phrase with some legato. Those little twitches are a great example of motor overflow as opposed to emotionally feeling the music. Right here, I get a little bit of an eyebrow raise, intimating some sort of playful tastiness in the melodic phrasing. And at the end of this performance, you'll notice I do this little head shake every single time I hit the prolonged notes, mimicking the quick vibrato on each of those notes. This is me trying to be in tune with my performance here. And further expounding upon this, looking at where my eyes are focusing will tell you where my brain is trying to focus and concentrate to make sure I don't mess up. If my eyes are away from the fretboard, I'm a lot less worried about fret accuracy and more worried about making sure I'm digging deep into responding physically to what I'm hearing on an expression level. But if my eyes are locked in on the fretboard, you know for sure I'm just making sure I'm not messing up. Here you'll see my fretting hand is doing the same pattern in the melodic phrasing, while my picking hand is changing. Instead of worrying about what my fretting hand is doing lower on the fretboard, I have my eyes focused higher up on the fretboard to make sure that I'm hitting the changes accurately. The fretting hand can be done by feel alone. And of course, more shameless tasty face and vibrato head shake. For this one, my eyes are almost exclusively locked in on the fretboard. This one was super difficult, required a lot of concentration, and I still didn't play it that well. Notice at the end of this arpeggio here, I take my eyes off of my fretting hand to look up the fretboard to see where I'm going to have to slide up to, since it's such a drastic slide. It is quite a long slide, and the pattern of that arpeggio is burned enough into my memory that I can spare a few seconds with my eyes off of it just to nail that and make sure I hit the slide up. Same with my performance here at the end of the Panic Attack bridge. I barely need to look at the fretboard in the beginning, and I'm mostly just focusing mentally on my performance, sometimes even have my eyes closed. Once we hit the legato portion, that's where I again take my eyes off of my fretting hand to make sure I'm looking up ahead of time to hit the proper fret at the beginning of the phrase to make sure I'm hitting that tap correctly. especially since I'm going between two-hand tapping and a sweep technique with my picking hand. So I hope that gave you a little bit of insight into guitar face and what's happening emoting-wise and also concentration-wise, what's going on in a guitar player's head and why their faces get all contorted and weird. In conclusion, this beautifully human phenomenon that is guitar face is one of the goofiest blessings that we've ever been granted. While there may be numerous reasons why these goofy expressions appear on our faces while we're performing, I think we can at least all agree that music would be a lot less fun without them. So again, I ask you, which guitarist has the best guitar face? Which one has the worst guitar face? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, if you like what I do on this channel, hit the like button, share the video. I think this would be a fun one to share around. If you want me to keep making badass videos for you, please support me on Subscribestar. And you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Become the Night. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Rock on.